Good evening. How's it going out there, folks? Welcome back here to a Saturday night. It is the Earthmaster out here, 9:43 p.m. That's California time, August 9th, 2025. Saturday night. Hope everyone's having a good, safe night out there. Latest earthquake shows looks like a 1.9 across California. Let's go ahead and see what we got going on here. It looks like it's at the just outside of the Bakersfield area around Grapevine. This is the area that had a 5.4 earthquake last year. We're getting a little clustering going on up here along the San Andreas Fault with a couple earthquakes here above the 2.5 level in the west coast, starting to kick up here a little bit. We got a number of 2-pointers, or at least above 2.5 here across this area. So let's see what we got. A little clustering going on right around the creeping section. That tells me right there that we are on the move, and we do need to watch other areas out here. This is pretty much an area of the plate boundary where the earthquake tension and the stress really doesn't build up to create a big earthquake, although it can, but it tends to just creep along. That's why they call it the creeping section. If you look here on the map, San Andreas Fault Zone, creeping section. I don't see it extending down into the Parkfield segment yet, but we do have to watch this area as we're coming up here. I feel on at least a 6-pointer along this area of the San Andreas Fault, because it does have regular intervals of 20 to 22 years of magnitude 6 or so, and our last one was back in 2004. Further down south here across the San Andreas Fault, a couple earthquakes there, including a 3-pointer right, looks like it's just right off the southern branch here of the San Andreas Fault this afternoon. That's pretty much the only one above 2.5. Aside from that, just generally small microquake activity out here in Southern California for now. A couple earthquakes up north around the Bay Area as well, including the Hayward Fault showing some activity with a 2.2. Little clustering going on outside of Vallejo here. Got some slight uptick going on, it looks like. Northern California, nothing showing up here. I'm kind of surprised. It is the weekend, so more than likely they're not going to be reporting any of the smaller quakes. Same for up in Washington here. Notice on the weekends or holidays, all the quakes disappear. So that's why we need to go and look at the seismograph stations ourselves, the recorded view, because Mount Rainier, I believe they're still having some earthquake activity. By the way, we'll get the Cascadia Tremor here in just a second because I want to show you a couple maps. But let's go over here to Mount Rainier and check the seismograph station out here. And yeah, look, still some earthquake activity. That's this here is just the last few hours or so up to the current time period, which is close to 10 West Coast time here. Number of earthquakes out there. These are obviously events. They're earthquakes. If you go back to the last UTC time here, it does look like we're getting a little bit more active out here compared to, I'd say, the previous week. Not quite as active as what we had back in the middle of July when the earthquake swarm was really ramping up, but it's definitely kicking up here a little bit more, it looks like. And up to this hour or so, there's a number of earthquakes. Now, the PNSN network's claiming that there's about close to 11,000 events, but only about 1,000 or those events have been located events as far as earthquake activity verifiable, like the magnitude, the location, the depth of the earthquake itself. Those are located and pinpointed. That's why if you go over here to the USGS map and look at the last 30 days, well, this doesn't include the 8th of July, but if we were, it'd be well above 1,000. This is only showing 715, but there was some migration here. Kind of started down south. Notice the migration pattern up north to where the I believe the current swarm is continuing there. That's where the seismograph station is there, the Camp Sherman seismograph station, and it's pretty close there to the epicenter of that event here. I don't see any signs of any magma movement. This is just earthquake activity, and a lot of it, and it's kicking back up. I know they've talked about this completely dying down, but I don't know. I mean, I have my glasses on. I can see just fine here. This does not look like it's completely dying down. All right, so a tremor map here tonight. Getting a little broader event out here. 335 epicenters of tremor along the Cascadia subduction zone. Most of it here has been in the last week. Let's see what we got here for the total count. 1962 most of that in the last week up there around the Washington area. But as I noted here, we do have some migration southward here into Northern California. A little bit more up into, there's a new area here. Most of it's been up around the Olympia area, but this is around the Oregon-Washington border, and also another cluster going on north of Seattle. So we're starting to fill in the strain out here, right? Let me show you guys just a little layout here. This is the Cascadia subduction zone. Here's the interface of it. Notice the arrows pointing down, kind of like a, well, this would be a warm front on a weather map, but pointing down, right? The Juan de Fuca plate here is subducting, diving down here. You can follow it all the way down into the, well, the hotter areas, down in the mantle. And then you get melting, right, of that oceanic slab. It melts and it goes up there and it feeds the volcanoes there across the Cascades. We do see tremor activity, which occurs roughly about here, about 45 kilometers or so down into the subduction zone. And then the locked area is right there in the red zone. A little bit underneath the land, but most of it offshore up to the interface there. And that's why we're going to see a tsunami when that does produce the big earthquake. Occasionally we do see deeper quakes down there. The slow slip events is a sign here that we're further pushing this Juan de Fuca plate down further and further. And this area is springing up. We're kind of reacting to that strain, pushing up here on the land. And it will rebound, obviously. It will decide to get unstuck and drop, of course, produce a big earthquake, and then the land will drop as well. But the tremor activity is definitely interesting right now because we do have that little on the elevated side. Again, if we look at the all data, we had a decent amount back in April and May. I'm kind of curious to see here. It was pretty quiet back in 2023, 2024, but things are starting to kick back up right now. Let's see how much we've got here since roughly about the beginning of the year. We'll just go right about here. It's going to be a crazy number, but this goes to show you the elevated counts there. May portion, well, a good month of May. The good portion of the month of May was one of our highest events here in the last few months. August is starting to come back up as well. And it's going to show you, this map's going to show you a well-defined area of strain upstream. This is the tremor that occurs down into the subduction zone, but got to remember when the strain is happening, or when the tremor is happening, it's not relieving strain, it's further applying strain offshore there for the Cascadia. So that's a decent amount, 32,000 epicenters since the first of the year. January up to the August time period. Let's see what it was like last year. It was pretty low last year. 2004, and go about there to August of that year, last year, right about there. Yeah, there's some events, but 32,000 compared to last year's events here. Let's see what, well, 37,000, is that right? 2000, I guess that would be right. So a little bit more, surprisingly. Maybe not as intensified there on a certain time period, but more so spread out, I guess. But either way, you know, it's a lot of tremor activity. And as that Juan de Fuca plate dives underneath the North American plate deeper and deeper, it could have an effect here on the Cascades and the volcanoes out here. Like I say, I don't see anything specific there across Mount Rainier that's telling me that magma is pushing upwards. But there's definitely, you know, an earthquake swarm of unprecedented numbers there for sure. So we'll continue to watch that. Cascadia subduction zone pretty active. For the earthquake activity that they are reporting, it looks like a little earthquake activity around Mount St. Helens. So why report that and not Mount Rainier? I guess we better go see what's going on there real quick. Mount St. Helens here. Got a little swarm on the south side, it looks like. I think this is the one that doesn't work. Let me double check here. Well, we got a decent map here. Let's see when those earthquakes struck. 0.4 at 8:30 in the morning. So 0.4, 8:30 in the morning, 08, 30. That might be this one right here, a little bitty one. But there's larger events there. These may be distant quakes. Those S waves are from other large events out there away from the area. But there's, if you look throughout the day here, there's been a number of quakes that are bigger than that little one they're registering there at 8:30 in the morning. Even on this latest model here, there's some local events there. So it does look like, to me anyway, the earthquake activity is increasing, at least across a couple volcanoes, Mount Rainier and Mount St. Helens being two of them. I haven't looked at all of these out here. I don't want to spend a whole bunch of time, but it could have something to do with the increasing tremor out here recently. We do see occasionally crustal quakes out here happen, also deeper ones, but the strain could be amplifying areas inland. Like I said, I don't see anything that's telling me that there's magma pushing up at any of these right now. But we do have earthquake activity, which is interesting. There's a little one there in Northern California right now, 2.3. That is deep. That is going to be this quake right here in the last, this is at 21:51. Yeah, so literally within the last couple minutes here. 2.3, notice the depth right here, 14.3 miles. Guess where that's at? That is into the subduction zone of the Cascadia, but upstream of where we're seeing tonight's tremor. Let me show you guys here real quick. Go back here to the tremor counts. And as I showed you guys, there's some newer movement down here across Northern California. This is about 35, 45 kilometers or so underneath the area. But this is interesting. Got some more back up here as well. A little bit closer to the San Andreas Fault area. But there is a portion here. The Cascadia kind of dives down underneath this area of Northern California. This is the extreme southern extent. There'd be no reason to see any tremor activity any further south that does not extend underneath this area. But that's about the extreme southern end. But that earthquake right now is occurring upstream here. And like I said, I'll show you guys right there on the map. You got Eureka over here to the northwest, and the tremor counts due east, literally due east and underneath this area, adding further strain. That's why we're seeing earthquake activity right now. Like I said, I was really surprised we haven't had any other events throughout the day. Maybe we have, and they just haven't been reported. The threshold up here looks like it's maybe above 2.1 or so. Notice the automatic status. Let's see here if we got any magnitude levels. Got 8 stations here showing, well, they're all over the place here. Probably going to have a manual review because of the earthquake depth there. It's a deeper quake. Didn't show up quite as prominent there across that seismograph station as you normally would see, but it's there. So anyway, watch the Cascadia. You just never know when this thing is going to go. We could just see a southern end go, or we could see the entire rupture. Yellowstone National Park, nothing major going on up there, it looks like. A couple earthquakes up in Montana, near Alberton, Montana, nothing big. Oil fields in Oklahoma, still seeing some movement. New Madrid seismic zone, pretty quiet for now. Out in North Carolina, 2 earthquakes from this morning. Nothing new really to report across the east. Got 1 earthquake way up outside of Quebec here in the Canada, 2.2. And another quake over here by Russia, it looks like. Aftershock sequences there. Going to continue for quite some time. There's some earthquakes showing up right now, not as big as the 4.7 about an hour ago, but still seeing continuous aftershock sequences there with about 28 earthquakes. This is above the recorded amount from yesterday. It's a little bit higher number. The only thing I'm watching here is this 6-pointer, literally back prior to the subduction zone, not into the subduction zone, but just right here at the Pacific plate level. And that's an interesting quake of a decent magnitude. I'm just wondering here if this area may not be done. Most of the other earthquakes here have been where the 8-pointer struck along the along this segment, but down into this area. This one is really shallow and back prior to the subduction zone. So maybe, just maybe, things are not done there. So we do have to watch that. Some earthquake activity in Guatemala as well this morning, or this afternoon, excuse me. Got 5.9 earthquake. That was a downgrade. Originally came in as a 6-pointer. That is along the Middle America Trench. Major subduction zone there that's capable of producing, guess what, megaquakes. And they can definitely see some big earthquake activity out there. Guatemala has been pretty active here recently with a bunch of swarms inland. But these larger quakes, they could give a sign here when they're really shallow as well across that subduction zone interface area. It could be a little sign that we could be seeing something bigger happen out here. I don't know when the last megaquake was out here, but man, they can get pretty big. I'll just show you guys historically here. Check out all the earthquakes. Look at how big some of those are. I'm talking up above the 8 range. So they get... that area is pretty dangerous. Look up north here. The Middle America Trench. All right. Let's see what else we got here real quick. Anything going on for the rest of the world? We got a bunch of movement down south again here. 4.6 off across the Antarctica area. Keeping New Zealand here in check. Got to watch that because it's eventually that's going to move with all the motion here recently around the area. It needs to happen, I think, because we haven't had any major adjustment there. 4.6 around the Vanuatu area. Pretty shallow earthquake. That's the only quake here in the seismically quiet zone today. Another earthquake up here off the Nankai Trough towards the southwest. Still watching that region. And Java Trench here in the Indonesia area in the crunch zone. Pretty active. Not a whole lot going on elsewhere across the globe. Got a 4.6 here in the Atlantic Ridge. Aside from that, we'll just keep an eye on things out there. Did they downgrade that? Let's see here. It's a 2.3 still. It'll be interesting to see what they do with that quake. They may not even pay any attention to it until Monday. All right, space weather activity. Anything going on here? Looks like another M flare. We're just coming down from an M flare right now. Look at that. Beautiful. Neat little M flare there. Shooting off from that active sunspot area. It's produced a number of M flares. I think that's going to produce an X flare here pretty soon, but it's by the time we wake up tomorrow, this thing is going to be probably much further off on the western limb, so really not going to be any worry as far as like if there's a major CME or whatnot. And we're going to be left with a whole lot of nothingness. There is a number of sunspots out here, but I tell you what, there's really nothing of any complexity within these sunspots here. There's a newer area back on the southeastern limb, but it's hard to tell on that. There's our very active area down here. Notice all the colors there trailing along that sunspot region, indicating that complexity. So may see an X flare from that one. Current flare threat shows us that we have a 55% chance for an M flare, 10% for an X flare. That's fairly reasonable. Nothing major going on in the auroras right now. Last night, a little bit different story, but since then we've died down. Nothing really in the forecast for now either. 98% illumination there with the moon coming up on the eastern horizon. Beautiful. I just took a peek outside there and seen it coming up. But I'm not going to go out and fight the mosquitoes tonight, so not going to happen. Real quick here on... Where'd my... Oh, there we go. So right now we're watching a tropical system there off the coast of Africa over here. That has the potential to strengthen into a major hurricane, and a little uncertainty on where it's going to go, if it's going to hit the East Coast, if it's going to go to the Gulf, or maybe it just might take a curve up north before reaching any land. But it does have potential to become a major hurricane up around 4 or so, and this could amplify. This is just the hours out. More likely this will amplify, but I want to see what we got for the forecast models here. Let's go over here to a different reading. We can go to the North Atlantic. I guess that would be a little bit better view of it. And we're going to check out the wind speeds out here. Here's our little tropical system watch that as we put this into motion here. That low stirs up into some type of decent hurricane there. And at least here on the latest model, wow, it shows it way away from the land. And that wasn't like that this morning. Oops. Go back here. So that looks like some good news there. There'd be no difference with that. Look at how far away it is from land. So, again, this could change, though. This is way into the 18th of August or so. About almost 9 days or so down the road. Could change. Hopefully that will be the path, because quite a few runs here I've shown it entering into Gulf here and slamming into Texas and Louisiana. There was one model showing it hitting the East Coast, but that looks a little bit better. Keep it away from land, right? All right, nothing major coming up in the severe weather department. Do have, looks like a little noise out there across this area of the country for the remainder of the night, all across Kansas and portions of Colorado up into, well, it looks like Lincoln and Omaha in that as well. All right, folks, I am going to call it a night. Keep an eye there on the Cascadia. It's, for the most part here, when the tremor activity is occurring down into that subduction zone, got to remember that's adding further strain, and these little quakes just kind of prove it, that we're building further stress and strain out there for the next big one, which could happen at any time. Just got to be prepared, folks. Not really necessarily worry about it 24/7, but we do have to make sure we know what to do when the big one hits out here for the Pacific Northwest. The big one up there, and then we have a big possibility down here along the plate boundary. And realistically speaking here, the entire West Coast here is pretty much overdue for big earthquake activity. So it could happen here at any point in time. But just got to be prepared out here. All right, have a good one. We will see you guys out here tomorrow for the Sunday morning update. Take care, folks. Have a good night.